A while back, I made a video talking about the Marvel Rivals Symbiote Spider-Man skin, and also spoke about some of the other symbiote outfits. I described how I believed a lot of them felt really inconsistent, and that the symbiote designs within Rivals already started to feel very, very messy. We've seen distinctly different designs for characters like Venom, the symbiote design for Spider-Man, Null, the Queen in black skin for Hela, and of course the various other symbiote skins we've seen released since. Now, fair warning, I have tried to cram as much information into this video as possible, and as much research into the topic. This should be the last time that I speak about the symbiote skins. I know at this point it's practically beating a dead horse, but of course I am very passionate about the Marvel symbiote, and of course very passionate about Spider-Man. I do just want to emphasize I'm not trying to sway anyone's opinions on these outfits, but more so just providing my thoughts on the matter. Recently, I've been reading the latest issues of the Marvel Rivals comic books, and they've revealed some information about some of these symbiotes that I thought was quite interesting and worth talking about. I haven't spoken about these symbiote designs since before they had released in-game, which means there is a lot to cover. There's a lot of strange choices, both artistically and narratively, that I thought were really interesting and definitely worth speaking about. So in today's video, I'm going to try my best to cover everything. And first of all, we're going to talk about our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Spidey's symbiote suit is the one that I've spoken about the most, and I have some very strong opinions on why I dislike this version of the suit. First of all, I'd like to once again point out how inconsistent it is with Rivals Venom. Both of these characters do possess the over-the-shoulder spider logo, which I think is very bizarre, as that logo is commonly associated with Mac Gargan's version of the character, whereas this version of Venom is Eddie Brock. But this seems to be an issue with a lot of Spider-Man and Venom related media as of late, and not just the Marvel Rivals thing. We've seen it also done in Spider-Man 2 and a few other animated adaptations. And vice versa, we've also seen Mac Gargan incorrectly drawn with Eddie and the symbiotes logo. But the inconsistencies between Marvel Rivals, Spider-Man and Venom is that first of all, Spidey's suit is very over-designed. It features a weird amount of panel lining, which is the weirdest on the head because it almost makes the suit look like it's got eyebrows. And the way that the symbiote eyes extend almost make him look like he has eyelashes too. The logo on Peter's suit is also raised and almost looks metallic when you're wearing it in-game. And one of my least favourite things is that the white patches on his hands don't even look like the typical square patches, but instead almost look like teeth. Of course, comparing this to Venom, Venom looks completely different. Yes, he still retains the over-the-shoulder logo, but it is much less jagged. It doesn't look sharp, and it's not raised off of his body. Venom also has the correct square patches on his hands. Now, before someone says, but they're not using the same symbiote, or they're from different universes. Yes, I've heard it all before, I've spoken about it all before. But you see, the problem is that in-game, when you read the description for the suit, it tries to claim that it is the original first appearance black suit that appears during the Secret Wars event. It claims it is that exact same version of the suit. And I know this is said with a lot of the rival suits, a lot of them claim to be one from a comic book despite not looking similar to that at all. So this isn't really a Spider-Man specific issue, and although of course I am disappointed it isn't more like its comic accurate version because that is one of my favourite Spider-Man suits of all time, at the same time I think I'm also just more annoyed that it doesn't match up more with Venom. If the suit still had the over-the-shoulder logo, but had a similar texture and logo design to Rivals Venom, then I personally think it would look much better. But instead it looks so overly designed and overly aggressive, which I don't really think lines up with Spider-Man very well. And I know some people will try and claim that usually when he's wearing the black suit, it's when he's more serious. However, when he first got the black suit or the symbiote suit was just a suit. And a lot of these more aggressive or serious moments that people talk about in regards to the black suit aren't even the ones with the symbiote, but rather the cloth version that he's given to by Felicia. Now, some people will try and claim that the lack of consistency is due to the fact that Spider-Man and Venom, in the context of Marvel Rivals, are from different universes. However, that doesn't mean they shouldn't follow the same art style as most characters in the game tend to. But also, despite the fact that the characters are from different universes, the symbiote that Spider-Man is wearing might not be, and might actually be from the same universe as Marvel Rivals Venom. Now, the revelation in the comics means that this isn't actually technically symbiote Spider-Man, as the symbiote he's wearing is a completely different entity entirely. During the comic, Spider-Man has a confrontation with Hela. This eventually leads to him getting a new symbiote parasite latching onto him. He jests about how all of the good symbiote names are taken and suggests that he be called Allergen or perhaps Kerfuffle. In the next issue, Captain Clintar addresses him as such, and in the latest issue, Storm also addresses Spider-Man as Kerfuffle while donning his new symbiote attire, though this also shouldn't be that surprising given the highlight intro in-game, meaning that this version of the character is not symbiote Spider-Man and is actually Kerfuffle, which is quite hilarious. And knowing that this is not actually the other, aka the Venom symbiote, it does make some of the design choices make a bit more sense. That being said, if you're going to try and claim in-game that it's the same suit, then I'd expect it to look a little bit more accurate. Now this is something I actually made a short about the other day, but this means that this is in fact not symbiote Spider-Man, though it is still Spider-Man wearing a symbiote suit. Which I know in saying that might sound really confusing, so let me clarify. Symbiote Spider-Man is specifically the version of the character when he is bonded with the other, which is more commonly known as the Venom symbiote, despite the fact that the symbiote's name on its own is not Venom. Venom is the combination of Eddie Brock and the symbiote. This is why they say we are Venom. This is something that's been iterated several times in the past, with one of the most recent examples being during a conversation with Dylan Brock and the symbiote itself, where Dylan speaks to the creature and asks them what their name is. He clarifies that of course when they're bonded with Eddie they're known as Venom, but what is the symbiote's name? To which the symbiote is confused and doesn't really know how to answer. Now symbiote Spider-Man is specifically when this symbiote is bonded with Peter Parker, not just when Peter is bonded with any symbiote. That's why we have characters like Spider-Carnage. And even the anti-Venom suit is specifically called the anti-Venom suit or the white suit, not symbiote Spider-Man. But how does all of this relate to the design inconsistencies between the symbiote suits? Well, before I can really go over that, I need to talk about some of the other characters. There's been quite a variety of new symbiote suits that have been released during this season. Now I'm going to focus specifically on the ones that are exclusively just a symbiote outfit, and not any of the polarity bond fusions, which are of course sometimes a mix of a symbiote and the Phoenix Force. We've had symbiote outfits for Captain America, Storm, Squirrel Girl, The Thing, Rocket Raccoon, Jeff, Groot, and technically Hela has one too, though hers is different. By that I mean, though it is technically a symbiote suit, she receives her symbiote in a completely separate way, as she is directly given it by Null himself, which is why it resembles Null's armor much more. All of the symbiote suits that are in the game right now are based on different comic appearances, and for the most part none of them really look very accurate to the comic versions they're supposed to be based on. But an interesting design choice amongst almost all of these symbiote suits is the fact that they possess some kind of glowing blue accents or blue crystals throughout their suits, which doesn't really make a ton of sense. Now I can excuse the Thing having a giant glowing blue 4 on his chest. I mean, he's a member of the Fantastic Four and he has blue. It's a common colour associated on most of his outfits. And I can excuse a couple of blue lines here and there on Storms, you know, with her having the power of electricity and often shooting blue lightning. Sometimes it's yellow. Cap also has blue, and this is a symbiote bonded to specifically this future version of Cap. So maybe you can excuse the random glowing blue elements of the Captain Clintar outfit. Despite that though, as a whole, this is a weird choice, especially given that the symbiotes that most of them are shown to be infected with are the symbiotes seen on Clintar. Now, if we specifically look at the Clintar map on Marvel Rivals, most of these symbiotes are black, but feature Null's famous red spiral. Yet, this is missing in almost every single one of the symbiote skins in-game, where it has instead been switched out for random blue elements. There is only 2 symbiote skins that actually feature the spiral. One is Hela's, and one is the Extremist suit for Iron Man. But the rest are all Clintar Warrior skins, and almost all of them, with I think the exception of Groot, have Null's logo as like their background when you view them in the hero menu. But what is extra strange is that all of these suits, or rather all of these symbiotes, come from the same place. There is some consistency with the group of characters I've just mentioned, but none of those characters share consistency with Spider-Man or Venom. Spider-Man doesn't feature any of the random blue elements. And don't get me wrong, this is a good thing, I'm glad he doesn't. But they all got their symbiotes from the same place, so why doesn't he but they all do. And why do none of them match up with Venom, who is from, presumably, this version of Clintar? Realistically, all of these outfits should share more similarities with Rivals Venom. They are almost all based on Venomized designs, but if they're not going to share similarities to Rivals Venom, then for the sake of the narrative, I would expect them to all be nullified. And we've seen nullified designs for almost all of these characters before during the King in Black event. It's also not out of the question for Rivals to make completely original outfits too, and I think narratively this just would have made so much more sense, but it would have also provided more visual consistency between the skins, and it would have made them look more like they are a complete set. So I know as of right now I've probably made my explanation of some of this stuff a bit more convoluted than I really need to. But to summarise, since most of these outfits are based on Venomized designs, or in Spider-Man's case, the original black suit, they should visually match up more so with Rivals Venom, especially with the symbiotes originating from the same version of Clintar. Though at the same time, that wouldn't really match up with the narrative. The problem is, the skins that they currently have don't match up with the narrative either. These are Null's symbiotes. In the story right now, they are fighting on Clintar. They are either fighting for or against Null and of course the Queen in Black Hela. Now, Hela's symbiote skin is pretty accurate to what it realistically should be. And that's of course because her symbiote was given directly from Null. It matches up very similarly to Null's armor, which in itself is a symbiote. I don't expect all of the symbiote skins to look exactly the same as each other, because for something like a hero shooter, you don't want them looking all exactly the same. But most of these characters have a very distinguished shape anyway, so realistically that wouldn't be much of a problem. But I just think the issue is that the designs are also inconsistent. You've got a group of them that do fit together pretty nicely. Spider-Man is then in his own little bubble, and then we have Venom, who is also in his own bubble. The symbiote skins don't really match up with the symbiotes that are actually latched onto them in the first place. Otherwise, they would look more like nullified symbiotes. I mentioned this before in one of my Symbiote Spider-Man related videos, but an artist on Twitter, Digion, created a pretty cool concept for a nullified version of Spider-Man's suit. And I think personally this would have worked much better in the context of what the symbiote suit is in Marvel Rivals. Again, this isn't symbiote Spider-Man. This isn't the original black suit that it claims to be. This is a new symbiote. So honestly, it does make sense why it looks so drastically different, but the problem is, in-game it's claiming to be that original suit and not a new version. If the description was a bit more clear and said it was inspired by this design, then that would make more sense. But it doesn't. It makes out as if it's that specific version that shows up in that issue of Spider-Man, despite the fact he's not wearing that symbiote. I think the blue gems and accents that some of the suits have are pointless, and Rivals seem to have an obsession with adding random colours to suits that don't really need it. Another example is the Future Foundation skins. More so for Spider-Man's, there's no reason for there to be glowing blue lenses or lines around the suit, as it just makes a much more messier design. You can have it fit in with the Marvel Rivals art style without altering the suit to an almost unrecognisable degree. And in the case of the symbiotes, there was already perfectly good Venom design in-game. Could it be better? Yeah, I mean, by that I just mean I prefer the under-the-shoulder logo, especially given the over-the-shoulder logo is Matt Gargan's design, as we've already mentioned. But aside from that, there's a lot of stuff I really love about the Rivals Venom, and I think these symbiote suits should have taken more inspiration from that, rather than doing their own thing. On that note, I think it is definitely time to wrap this video up. I do apologise that this has come off much more as a rant, but I have tried to cram as much information in here as possible without wasting too much of your time. These characters are of course incredibly important to me. I love the Marvel Universe, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I don't care if it's a generic option. Spider-Man is my favourite superhero of all time, and the black suit is one of my favourite Spider-Man suits. I'm definitely using this as a quick excuse to talk about some of my action figures, but I have collected a multitude of different Spider-Man related figures over the past couple of years, because unfortunately I'm not very responsible with money, and I like to spend that money on little plastic articulated men. This probably, hopefully, will be the last time that I talk about the symbiote suits and Rivals. I think I have really covered everything that I absolutely could, and have spoken about pretty much everything I want to speak about in this regard. I don't expect Rivals to make any changes to the designs, but it would be nice to see them all get some recolors in future. But anyways, let me know what you all think down in the comments. If you'd like me to do some more stuff that goes over some of the Marvel Rivals comics, or just Marvel stuff in general outside of just Rivals, let me know. I'm of course still going to be talking about Rivals. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.